if you are a local football fan and you're not reading herosports.com, you're missing out. One of the things that fans of ETSU, fans of the Southern Conference have often said about FCS football, hey, it's real good football, really it is. Look at all the pros that are put out. But there just isn't a whole lot of coverage, and that there is often kind of rah-rah, That's where Hero Sports comes in. Brian McLaughlin is their FCS coordinator. He joins me here from his home in Tampa. Kind of nice that a Hero Sports guy is now all out on the West Coast. I got to tell you that, Brian McLaughlin. But he does cover the Southern Conference for Hero Sports. Hero Sports, you will find just about as much coverage of the FCS as the FBS, I think, on their site. So I'd say it is a good read. Without any further ado, and pardon me for our Facebook watchers here, Brian McLaughlin, we got ETSU and Wofford coming up. It looks like it's going to be for all of it in the SoCon. Who do you think is going to win this football game?
Well, I've gone on the record now twice saying that ETSU, so I'll be
Ooh.
with that.
And why are you picking the 12-point underdog, East Tennessee State Buccaneers, who I often refer to as a bunch of SOBs, same old Bucks who always find a way to blow it? How do you think that they will beat Wofford for the first time since reinstating football and for the first time since the 1998 season?
Well, first of all, anytime I see betting lines on FCS football, it cracks me up because so often those lines.
That's where you make your money at, betting FCS. I mean, yeah, I've determined that too. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, I'm looking at comparative scores, and granted, look, in this crazy league, anything can happen, as we've seen for 7 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
But you consider, matchup-wise, Furman took Wofford to the woodshed this past weekend. ETSU knocked off Furman. There's one example.
Mm-hmm.
Not that ETSU is 27 miles, better than Wofford, but that obviously they're probably pretty comparative, pretty comparable programs. So, I honestly think it could go either way, but ETSU has been the one SoCon team that has figured out how to win close games. The rest are just chopping each other up, which we wrote that in the summer. We saw that coming. I thought it would be maybe at a little bit of a collective higher level, but we knew they were going to hammer each other. We knew there were a lot of teams that were comparable and pretty good. I will not say that I knew that ETSU would be at the top here heading into the weekend of October 20. There's no way. I never would have thought that. But, what have they done? Four SoCon wins for a total of, 12 points?
They've won. Let's see here. VMI was 3, Furman was 2, Chattanooga was 3, and then this last opponent was 3 as well. So there you go. That's the last opponent being the Citadel. So let's add them up. I guess 11, that's 11. Yeah.
They get into a close game. They find a way, and I think that starts, with and we're going to write this story tomorrow. We'll be publishing it. I'll make sure you get to see it. This is a core of kids that have been together for 5 seasons when you count the 2014 fall when they didn't play a game. And I think when you have a good senior core like that that's been starting games for 4 straight years, when you're talking about a Dylan Weibel or an Austin Harris or, whoever you want to throw out there, those types of senior-laden teams do win close games. I mean, it's a leadership thing, I think. And they certainly have talent, too. The younger kids are very talented in this program. The recruiting job the last couple of years has been excellent.
Well, let me just touch this upon you here, Brian McLaughlin of Hero Sports, who has just picked ETSU to beat Wofford, which would then unquestionably, even though the Buccaneers are in first place in the SoCon all by themselves, that would unquestionably make them the team to beat this season after being picked 8th in the preseason. But you mentioned that you're going to do this on the 5-year players, people who have been there and such. And you mentioned, Herink, you mentioned Weigel, Matt Pike, the center, also is one of those players and such. But the question I have is, did you ask them why they decided to stick around after an 11-22 start? And, after last season, there was mass exodus of graduates. There were 27 players who graduated, many with eligibility still left. And maybe they knew Carl Torbush wasn't going to come back, but, so what? Coaching changes do happen. Did you ask them at all why they decided to stay when so many people decided to leave?
I did not ask that specifically, but I did know that there was, there were departures, and some kids, one thing. I mean, some kids just know that they're not necessarily going to go to the NFL, and they want to get started on their careers. There's some of that, but I think these guys wanted to stick around and see if what is happening currently could happen. They clinched the winning season, first time in 17 years, and making some history. We don't know exactly what will happen over the next 4 to 5 weeks, but they could make the playoffs for the first time in 22 years. And am I speculating? Yeah, but after talking to Pike and Weigel and Austin in the past, and I got the feeling they didn't want to finish just yet. It wasn't they weren't done yet in building this thing. So I'm speculating, but I would imagine that they felt like there was unfinished business.
We're talking to Brian McLaughlin, he of HeroSports.com. He covers the FCS. He's the FCS coordinator, focuses a lot on the Southern Conference. And guess what? He just said ETSU is going to beat Wofford. So anyway, I want to ask you this, though. Why is the SoCon so down? Heroes got him as the 6th best conference. I grew up, I listened to Paul Hamilton back in the day, always said, this is the SEC of FCS conferences. If I even mentioned in the 90s that, hey, I think the Yankee conference is pretty good, I had to put up my hands in front of my face to shield myself from the SoCon is the best, SoCon is the best, SoCon is the best that I would hear. Now Heroes got him number 6. Why is this?
Yeah, well, that's our computer ranking. I'm not so sure I agree with that.
Well, you wouldn't have him number 1.
No, I would not. No, I would not have them in the top 3. Now, I think the argument is, at this point, who is number 4, 5, 6? And, right now, it's kind of tough to say, I'd say, between the Southland and SoCon, who's number 4. I think the OVC, depth-wise, just based on results, probably number 6. Now, our computer rankings, that's algorithm-based, and it has its reasons for where it puts things. But, me just being a guy who watches this every week, right now the pecking order is, we can make arguments of whether it's the CAA or the Missouri Valley is number 1. The last couple of years, Missouri Valley has clearly been number 1. This year's CAA is pretty good. Number 3 is definitely Big Sky. I think that's pretty clear cut. I think SoCon, you can make an argument for number 4. The teams are chopping each other up. The Southland, that's not necessarily the case. There's a very clear dichotomy, I think, with the Southland of who's good and who isn't. And with the SoCon, it's just not like that. I mean, even BMI, a program that has struggled for years, has given a couple teams fits this year, including ETSU. So,
yeah,
your easy win.
Of course, there was a different quarterback at the helm when ETSU played VMI with Logan Marchie, who I don't want to throw under the bus. I very famously said on this show, Logan Marchie is better than Jarrett Guarantano, and I'm still not sold that he isn't, to be honest with you, after what I saw he did at Temple. But that being said, there was a quarterback change back then. ETSU was trailing by 3 touchdowns to Furman before Herring came in. You did have those sort of things. I guess, would this rise from 11-22 to 6-1 be possible in any other conference? I do think that there is something about the weakness of the conference, especially since ETSU has won their games so close. What do you think? I mean, could ETSU be 6-1 in a better conference?
Let me spell it out like this. The SoCon, to me, let's do a rating system of 1 to 10. I feel like the SoCon has a lot of 5s, 6s, 7s. I don't think they have any 2s. Maybe VMI. Maybe. But VMI, it's proven to give some people fits too. So as we just said. Now you go to the Southland Conference, and I think you have an 8 out of 10 with the vaccine. You have a 7 out of 10 with Nichols, and maybe Sam Houston State this year. So could ETSU go to the Southland and 6-1? Well, if they played that soft underbelly of that league, yes. I think ETSU could beat 2/3 of the Southland. I don't know if they could beat McLaughlin, though, for instance. So it depends on, which one they're in. And the OVC, which of course has several teams in the state of Tennessee also, is really not very strong this year. The Cinderella story of 2017 was Austin Peay, of course, and Austin Peay is not quite doing what they did last year. Of course, they sure aren't in a 29-game losing streak anymore, which is good. But I think there are teams ETSU could beat in the OVC for sure. But it would just depend. Like if ETSU, let's say, started out with 4 games against the bottom half of the Southland, I wouldn't even question that they'd be 4-0. But if they had to play Sam Houston back-to-back, maybe not. So I don't know if that sums it up, but that's, to me, the SoCon has a ton of parity. I don't think they have a 9 out of 10 team quality-wise, but I don't think they have a 1 out of 10 either. The Southland, I think McNeese is an 8 or 9 out of 10. But they have some teams that are 2s. They have some teams that are 3s. And there's not nearly as much parity in that league. So, I don't know. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah, I get it. It seems to me that you're saying there's a lot of parity, and ETSU has been able to come out ahead for whatever reason. The fact that VMI just can't beat anybody and didn't have a field goal kicker that could boot a 46-yarder at the end, let's say. Or, that even after Herring's comeback, the receiver for Furman forgot the new rule, and so he had Furman pinned down real deep, so easy safety, maybe not easy, but a safety possibility for ETSU to beat Furman. A good punt field position game prevents a Chattanooga comeback, and for that matter, Tyree Robinson pretty much single-handedly, after what he had to endure in spring practice, winning the Citadel game and such. Are you at all surprised with Randy Sanders? Because I kind of am. I mean, here's a guy who, yes, has a nice resume, but let's face it, he came to ETSU down. He wasn't going to return to Florida State. Come on, he wasn't going to return there as their offensive coordinator. He was looking for a job. Then the first thing that happens is he gets suspended, and then he chooses the wrong quarterback. And ETSU is 6-1. Are you surprised?
Am I surprised? Frankly, I'm very impressed with his resume, where he's been.
I am too. I think it might be the second best hire they've ever made in any sport, ETSU, in terms of a resume, second most impressive resume, possibly next to Carl Torbush. But let's face facts, you get suspended, you choose the wrong quarterback, and you come in after you've coached Florida State's demise. That's not really a position of strength, and the guy's 6-1, team 6-1. I guess, how surprising do you think this is?
I don't think it's all that surprising.
Okay.
This is coming from an outsider standpoint. Obviously I wasn't in Johnson City for spring practice, or I'm obviously aware of that and what happened. But
Lost his offensive coordinator, for crying out loud. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
No, I think part of it is the coach, but I also think part of it is the group of guys that's been together for 4 years. That it kind of. I'll tell you what, in watching this, and it's funny. I was joking around with Dylan about this when we were on the phone yesterday. I started covering FCS football the same weekend that ETSU came and restarted their program in 2015, and I've watched this team over 4 years, and I feel like at times they've been right on the verge, and then they would have a result against a really good, solid program within the SoCon, and I'd kind of scratch my head and go, man, these guys might be on the verge of busting loose. But then it didn't quite happen as far as a complete season. But I've always thought, gosh, this is not a bad program. This is a program that's right on the verge of just needing to have upperclassmen. It's kind of like the same stuff we've seen at Mercer and we've seen at Kennesaw, These programs started from scratch, and it took a couple years, and they got rolling. I think part of it is Randy Sanders, I think, is a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that this team was ready to win. And, it's a good combination of the guys who were resilient and hung around, stuck with it, and obviously some very talented younger kids. That's really good chemistry. And, they are the only team in this league that seems to know how to avoid landmines, at least up to this point. They've proven they know how to do that and get out of a game with the W. So, and that is usually good coaching and good senior leadership, I think.
Senior leadership, certainly. I mean, you've got Player, you've got Weigel, you've got Herring, you've got Pike. I mean, yes, I totally am with you there. We're talking to Brian McLaughlin. He covers the SoCon. He's the FCS coordinator. I would just ask you this here as we go on. How many teams do you think the SoCon is going to put into the playoffs, the field of 24?
Boy, season stop today, I think we're looking at 2. I think we're looking at an automatic berth and whoever's next. Now, can that change in the next 5 weeks? Yes. I mean, what needs to happen is a couple teams need to solidify. We need to stop seeing the tripping up at Stanford. What if Stanford wins out and they finish on a 6-game winning streak and they just torch people the rest of the way, which I think is possible, and they finish 7-4. Okay, maybe, depending on the dynamics around the country, maybe a 7-4 Stanford team gets in based on how hot they finish. But if they just all keep hacking each other up, this is going to be a 2-bid league. And if they really, really hack each other up, it could be a 1. Because I'll tell you right now, the OVC looks like a 1-bid. It's just going to be the automatic bid, I think, based on what I'm seeing right now. The SoCon does not want to go down that road. There needs to be basically some teams stepping up. Right now, as of today, it would be ETSU and Wofford, I would think. But some big matchups lie ahead.
We've been talking to Brian McLaughlin, Hero Sports FCS coordinator, who focuses on the SoCon. How far in that field of 24 do you think a SoCon team can play? I mean, I'm not expecting really, North Dakota State to fall, or really even James Madison or somebody like that, or South Dakota. But South Dakota State, excuse me. But
Yeah.
I am looking at, how far do you think a SoCon team can go? Could they actually get a bye? What do you think?
Well, if ETSU wins out,
Mm-hmm.
10-1, and they will be a seed. I mean,
If ETSU wins out, that will be so un-ETSU. But yes, go ahead. Yes.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. I think, in terms of, when we're talking about heading into the weekend of October 20th, it's basically like, all right, okay, which teams control their own destiny?
Mm-hmm.
ETSU is one of those rare teams in this country that doesn't have to rely on a million other things happening concerning other teams to get to where they want to go. If ETSU wants to be a seed, it's all in front of them. I mean, it's sitting right there. And I think ETSU is a lock seed at 10-1. Anybody
Sure.
in one of the
Sure.
best 6 conferences needs to be a lock seed at 10-1. 9-2 starts to open up some questions. I mean, 9-2 is definitely going to get ETSU in the playoffs. Whether they're a seed or not, I think you're going to need to know what everybody else. That's when you start looking at resumes and compare. 8-3, I think you still get in at 8-3 out of the SoCon. I'm pretty sure. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that would be my best shot at it, I think.
Do I strike you here, Brian? This is my next question. Brian McLaughlin is the objective professional here of Hero Sports. Brian McLaughlin. I want to. I'm leading up to something here.
Okay.
Do I strike you as the objective professional?
I think so.
Thank you. Now then, here's my next question, Brian McLaughlin. Okay, this is where I'm going with this here. I am one who on this show talks about the Tri-Cities becoming more cosmopolitan, and oftentimes communities, in fact, I think the vast majority of the time, become more cosmopolitan through sports. So I talk about following ETSU, especially basketball, and thinking of ETSU as the big league team, certainly in men's basketball, of the area. I talk about, wouldn't it be great if we had a new arena here, not just for ETSU and for concerts, but so that an ECHL team could play here? What would it mean for the Tri-Cities to have an ECHL team that Knoxville, Asheville, and Roanoke wouldn't? I talk about, wouldn't it be nice if we just get rid of the mom and pop Appalachian League 4 AA? But this is what I can't get over. Let's just say ETSU wins 10 games. They did it before in 96. They did it before in 69. Are we counting our chickens before they hatch? Certainly. But let's just say that, okay? And so they go win their first conference championship of any sort in 49 years and 37 seasons. All right, let's say that all happens. How do you combat the traditional reply, the small-minded reply of, oh, so ETSU at their zenith and Tennessee at their nadir is still 56 points behind the Volunteers?
How do you combat that?
How do you, because half the population of the Tri-Cities says that, and so they treat ETSU with lip service and sell out their town.
That's apples and oranges.
And I ask that because it may make me sound like the ETSU homer, but I don't think it does. I still think I'm doing the objective professional thing, Brian McLaughlin and all that. And you go apples and oranges, but they did play. And it was the second worst loss ETSU has suffered since 1924. So,
Yeah, no, I know. Well, when it comes to those games, we know why those games are played.
Yeah.
You get a paycheck.
But Samford almost beats Florida State. I mean, the SoCon traditionally, Furman beating South Carolina, Appalachian State back in the day owned Wake Forest. I mean, no, I don't expect 8 touchdowns to lose by, and I know part of that's tip passes and all that. That's part of the game. You got to get your own tip passes. I mean, that sort of thing. So, That's the thing. How do you combat that? Because you got to understand in the Tri-City, in the Piedmont, in Greenville, Furman may be in the shadow of Clemson and South Carolina. They're not subservient. ETSU does come off as subservient to Tennessee in a lot of ways. How do you prevent that?
I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. My mom went to Furman, so and I went to high school between Greenville and Clemson. So
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
They have their own identity. They have victories against South Carolina in their history. I remember
North
it.
Carolina State, Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
They were beating North Carolina State.
They have a national title.
Yep.
They also don't have to have their entire coaching staff have Tennessee ties.
Right. Well, you're telling me some stuff I wasn't even aware of, and I don't know. The shadow of Rocky Top is a long shadow, I guess. But not knowing that dynamic, I can tell you as a Florida Gator grad myself, I've been to Neyland Stadium, and I've been in that atmosphere when things are good, and it's intimidating and it's impressive. But again, comparing, whether they win on the same field or not, to me, it's still apples and oranges because ETSU is playing with nearly 25 fewer scholarships. ETSU is never going to get 5-star recruits, and they know it, and they're not even embarrassed by it. Those kids.
And the thing is, I think
They're going to go to Tennessee.
You're saying those things, and I can't argue it. That it's just that I, as a Tri-Citian, do not want to put my area behind, say, Knoxville and all that. I'm like saying, I live in the only area in the world that kind of thinks of itself as being in, having an inferiority complex to Knoxville. Who has an inferiority complex to Knoxville? I mean, New York City, that makes sense. Chicago, Atlanta. Who has a Knoxville? What's that? Nashville would make sense, but this does not necessarily make sense. Anyway, hey, and 59.3 does not help matters any. Tri-City Sports Now. Hey, he's Brian McLaughlin. Like I said, when does this article on ETSU come out?
Tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, we're going to publish.
All right, I will definitely check that out. If you're not checking out herosports.com and you're an ETSU fan, you've got to do it. They've got great FCS coverage, in large part because of Brian McLaughlin, their FCS coordinator who focuses on the SoCon. I'm up against it. Let's get out of here for our last segment coming up after this. All right. How do you like that?